Mubarak for you is my prayer. May you keep ascending success stair. Mubarak for you is my prayer. May you keep ascending success stair.
Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidil Mursaleen. Amma ba'd. Fa'udhu billahi min shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalatu wassalamu alayka ya Rasulallah. Wa ala alika wa ashabika ya Habiballah. Assalatu wassalamu alayka ya Nabi Allah. Wa ala alika wa ashabika ya Nur Allah. My dear Islam brothers and viewers of Madani Channel, whenever Allah Azza wa Jal blesses you with an opportunity to enter the house of Allah Azza wa Jal, i.e. the masjid, the first thing that you must realize is that you're very, very lucky. Allah Azza wa Jal has chosen you. There are many, many people, they have decided not to come to the house of Allah. And the reason being is that Allah Azza wa Jal has not chosen them. Allah Azza wa Jal has not given them the permission to come to your house. So you need to be thankful whenever you come to the house. And in coming to the house of Allah Azza wa Jal, if you always try to enter according to the Sunnah of the Prophet of Allah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, the final messenger of Allah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam would always enter with his right foot. And then he would recite the dua, Allah maftali, ababa, rahmatik. And then our pious predecessors have also said that if you make intention for nafli itikaf, then the duration that you spend in that masjid, it will be written in your book of deeds that you spent that time in nafli itikaf. And hence we ask you to say, nawaitu sunnat al-itikaf. This intention can be made in any language. Today we made it in Arabic, it can be made in any language, in English, in Urdu, whatever it is, or it can even be made in your heart. But by making this intention, you'll get the sawab of being in nafli itikaf. May I remind you, to eat, to drink, and to sleep in the masjid is forbidden. But if you make this intention, then all of these things become allowable for you, and you get the reward as well. So alhamdulillah, small amount of effort, but a huge amount of reward. There are also many blessings in reciting Durud Pak upon the Prophet of Allah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. The final messenger of Allah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is reported to have said that whoever sends salat upon me once, just once, Allah Azza wa Jal sends 10 mercies upon him. Sallu ala al-Habib. You know, Nigarani Shura, the head of the executive cabinet of Dawah Islam, he was here in the UK. And I remember we had a meeting with all of the Zimadars in Victoria Park Masjid in Manchester. And after the Ijtima, people were encouraged to travel in the way of Allah. 12 months, 6 months, 3 months, 1 month. And very few people were putting their hands up. And then he made an announcement. He said, whoever makes the intention to travel in the way of Allah, I will present their name in the court of Amir al-Sunnat, the founder of Dawat Islami. And slowly, slowly, hands started to go up. And to be able to get your name presented in the court of Amir al-Sunnat, you're having to travel in the way of Allah for at least 1 month. I'm saying to you today that if you send salat upon the Prophet of Allah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam just once, not only will your name, but your father's name will also be presented in the court of the Prophet of Allah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So please make it part of your daily routine. You know, nowadays we try to multitask things, we try to do many things at the same time. Durud Pak is something that you can do whilst you're doing many other things as well. You can be driving, you can be waiting, you can be working, whatever it is you're doing. And a lot of our time we are waiting for things. We're waiting for the tube, we're waiting for the train, we're waiting for the next job, we're waiting for the next customer, we're waiting to see the doctor. All of this waiting time should never be wasted time. And one of the best ways to utilize that time is sending Durud Pak upon the Prophet of Allah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So please make it part of your daily routine. But Islam brothers and viewers of Madani Channel, a pious person was once asked that when will I become a mu'min? When will I become a true believer? And the reply that he was given was that will be when you love Allah. When you love Allah, you become a true believer. Now the person asked the next question. Okay, that's fair enough. But how will I know if I love Allah? It's okay saying it, but do I really love Allah? And the reply was that you will know that you love Allah when you love the Prophet of Allah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. The next question, the most important question. How will I know that I love the Prophet of Allah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam? We all claim it, we all say it. So the question was posed, how will I know that I love Allah? And this was the reply. And this is the reply that we all need to think about. That we say that we love, but do we really love? This will be when you obey His orders, follow His footsteps, observe His Sunnah, love the people who love Him, and hate the people who hate him. Then you can say that you're a lover of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And as we all know that loving the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is part of our iman. It's very important to have that faith, that love of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam inside us. And there's a hadith and there are many other hadiths. And in this particular hadith, we are told that you cannot be a mu'min until you love the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam more than your mother, your father, and everything else as well. And we hear that when the Sahaba, they used to talk, when they were asked a question, when the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to ask them a question, they all used to reply that, may our mother and father be sacrificed for you. You know best. Allah and His Rasul know best. That these were true lovers. And one of the ways to instill the love of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to our hearts, and we know that it's important. There are many hadiths that state we have to have this love inside us. One of the ways to instill the love is to talk about the lovers. See how they live their life. Look at how they express their love. It's okay saying love, but how? Look at the companions. Look at our pious preachers. Look at those people that love the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then you'll be able to see it. And today, inshallah, we're going to talk about a person that not only through his life loved the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but he injected love. He instilled love into many, many people. Millions of people through him have had the love of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam instilled in their hearts. And we all know that this person, he's known as the Mujaddid of the 13th Islamic century. He was known as Sayyidi Ala Hazrat, Imam Al-Sunnat, Wali Nemat, Azim Al-Barakat, Parwane Sham Risalat, Mujaddid Deen Millat, Alama, Maulana, Al-Hajj, Al-Qari, Al-Shah, Imam Muhammad Raza Khan. This is the great personality. And at that time when he was around, when he was alive, the enemies of Islam tried to empty the love of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What the enemies of Islam have realized, this is also an important point to realize, that the enemies of Islam realize that the one thing that they need to do, to minimize the impact of the Muslims is remove that love. They realize this. They realize that if they can remove the love from the hearts of Muslims, then they will be successful. And they worked on this. And whilst this was happening, he spent his whole life contradicting them. He spent his whole life facing them, fighting them. And he spent his whole life feeding the world Ishq Rasul. Sayyidi Ala Hazrat, he also had great knowledge as well. He said that he had a command of over 50 branches of knowledge. And he knew the names of 6,000, more than 6,000 Sahaba, companions of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Nowadays, if I was to ask you to name 10 companions, many of us would struggle. Many of us would struggle to name 10 prophets, but he had this command of his knowledge. But today we're not going to talk about the knowledge that he had. We're going to talk about the love that he had for the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We're going to talk about his iman as well. He used to put his index finger and his thumb together, so his hand would say Allah, and he would sleep in such a way like this. And they said that he would sleep in such a way that his body would say Muhammad. And he made an oath. He said, I take an oath. I swear by Allah that if you were to split my heart in two, on one side La ilaha illallah, on the other side Muhammad Rasulullah. He was also a great poet. He was also a great poet, and he wrote poems. He wrote poems of love, but love for what? Love for the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If you read his book Hadait-e-Bakhshish, every line of it is showing his love. Not only is he showing his love, but he's written it in such a way that when you read it, you will feel that love coming through. Now, many of the brothers know that my Urdu is not very good. But when I listen to the nas that were written by him, and I try to understand him, or I get people to translate them for me, I realize that every single line is about instilling the love of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in our hearts. If you look at the Quran translation that he did, Kanzul Iman, I would advise everybody, if you do not have a copy of Kanzul Iman, please get a copy. Dawat Islami has translated it into English, but every single line, the way he translated it, when you read something, you can feel that love coming through. He wrote it in such a way that he was expressing his love. Even his translation expressed his love for the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And it stated at that time, what happened was because of what he was doing, because of the efforts that he had, people started to criticize him. People started to curse him. People started to abuse him. Whenever he heard about that criticism, whenever he heard about that abuse, he used to smile. People said, why are you smiling? These people are abusing you. These people are criticizing you. He said, these same people These same people used to criticize and abuse the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Today they're abusing me. So if they are abusing me, they're not abusing the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So let them abuse me. This in itself is a show of love. And he had so much love. And he had that love for the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but he also had a love for everything attached to any nisbat of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And one of the nisbats that he had the love was for the city of Medina, the resting place of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And whenever people came back from the Hajj, he used to go and visit them, like we visit people. When people come back from the Hajj, we go and visit them. Why do we visit them? So that we get a bit of zamzam, maybe some kajur, maybe we'll get a tasbih or a ittar or something. We'll get some sort of a gift and we'll say, how was the hotel? Yeah, was the food good there? How was your journey? These are the sort of questions we ask, yeah? Sayyidi Ala Hazrat, when anybody would come back from Hajj, he would have one question. Only one question. And the question was, have you visited Medina? Did you visit Medina? And if the person said yes, he would get up from his resting place and he would kiss the feet of the person that had visited Medina. Now we're not talking about an ordinary person here. We're talking about the greatest Imam of his time, the greatest scholar of his time. But the love that he had for Medina, he would kiss the feet of those people, of those feet that had touched Medina. But then the thought comes to mind that if a person has this much love for the city of Medina, what would that person be like when he goes to Medina? Allah. You know, he was very, very blessed that he was able to see many, many times the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in his dreams. Many, many times he was blessed with this. He had that fortunate gift in him. But he had this thirst inside him as well, that I want to see the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam with my own eyes. I've seen him when I'm asleep, I want to see him with my own eyes. So when he went to perform the Hajj the second time, he stood in front of the Roza Rasul. He was reciting Durud Pak upon the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, hoping, praying that he would be able to see the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam with his own eyes. But it didn't happen. And he came back to his resting place and he was upset. He thought that maybe I'm not worthy of this, maybe I'm so low, I'm not capable of this. And he wrote some poetry. He wrote the Naat in praise of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and in that poetry he referred to himself. He lowered himself and he humbled himself and he referred to himself as a dog in that poetry. And the next day when he recited that poetry in the court of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was blessed to see the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam with his own eyes. Allahu Akbar. This is the love that he had. You know, nowadays we do dua. We do dua and you're told that, you know, if you make this dua, then this won't happen to you. If you do this, then this won't happen to you. Do this for this. But he believed it. He had so much faith. And the only example I can give is like a small child. A small child, the mother, when that mother says something to the child, that child believes it. Believes it, fully believes it. Why? Because the mother is saying to it. And that child, in that child's eye, whatever the mother's saying is true. I'm talking about small children. When they get a bit bigger than they don't listen to the parents as much. Small children, they will believe everything that the mother says. Sayyidi Ala Hazrat was the same when it came to the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He firmly believed it. Firmly believed it. This is Iman. This is the Iman of having that whatever the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, to believe it. And if you believe what the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, this is also a way of expressing your love. To believe. Another instance, when he was coming back from the Hajj, and in that time people used to come on the ship. Nowadays you fly, you get to Jeddah and you get an express train. Then it was a long journey. He's coming back on the ship and there was a storm. And the storm was so bad that the captain made an announcement. He said that if any of you have your kaffans, because people when they come back from the Hajj, they get kaffans and they take them there, or some people get some drops of zamzam on it, whatever it is. If any of you have your kaffans, put them on. Because in all my experience as a captain, I've never seen a storm like this. I do not think we will survive this storm. So you can imagine when he makes this announcement, people are screaming. Women are screaming, men are running here and there. They don't know what's happening. Children are obviously screaming. Sayyidi Ala Hazrat is sitting in the corner, doing a zikr. Ya Sayyidi, what are you doing? He said, nothing's going to happen. Don't worry. So what do you mean nothing's going to happen? The captain, he's been the captain of a ship for many, many years. He's telling us that this storm like this he's never seen. He said, the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught us a dua. And he said, if you recite this dua before you begin the journey, then nothing will ever happen to you. I recited that dua, nothing will happen. And a short period of time later, the storm finished. This is Iman. This is Iman. Not only did he have love for the Sunnah of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, not only did he believe every single word of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, not only did he have love for the city of Medina, but he also had love for the Ahl Bayt as well. It's stated that he was in his room working, doing some writing, and every few moments he would put his pen down, stand up and this. And he'd wait for a while. And he'd do this. And this happened 2 or 3 times. And his students that were with him say, what's happening? Why are you doing this? He said, there is a Sayyid child in my street that's playing. And every time he goes past the window, I stand up out of respect. And when I see that the child has disappeared, I sit down and carry on with my studies. This is the love that he had for the Sayyids. And not only that, his students also learned, they realized that if they wanted him to do anything, get a Sayyid to tell him. They said they realized that if we asked Allah Hazrat to do something, he might not listen to us. But if we get a Sayyid to do it, then we're sorted. And one instance happened where he wasn't eating properly. He was eating very, very little. Maybe only a small meal a day. And he started to get weak. And his students said to him, Azur, eat. And he said, no, I'm too busy. I've got this writing to do. I'm too busy. I've got this writing to do. So they came up with a plan. They called a Sayyid. You tell him. You tell him. And when the Sayyid said to him, look, you need to eat. He said, no, I'm too busy. He said, no, you need to eat. You'll get weak. He said, no, I'm too busy. I'm too busy. So the Sayyid said, okay, on the day of judgment, I will say to my grandfather that you didn't listen to me. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. The face of Sayyid Al Hazrat changed. He said, I'll do whatever you want me to do, but don't say that. On the day of judgment, don't say that against me. So food was brought. But the Sayyid was also very clever. He said, not just today, every day. Make sure that every day you eat properly. Yeah. This again, the respect that he had for the Sayyids. And we need to understand this. He wrote a book of Fatawa, 30 volumes. See these shelves that are here now? It would cover the whole wall of these shelves, 30 volumes of Fatawa he wrote. We're not like a little, but each book is about this big. And in one of them he was asked a question, that if a Sayyid, if you are a Qazi, and a Sayyid has done something wrong, or if a Sayyid has done something wrong, what should the intention of the Qazi be when he passes judgment? Because the Sayyid's done something wrong. And he said the intention of the Qazi should be that he is cleaning the feet, the dust that has got on the feet of the Sayyid. When he is giving that ruling, that should be his intention. That dust has got on the feet of the Sayyid and he is cleaning it. This is the love. Everything that Sayyid Al Hazrat did, his whole life was for the sake of Allah. And he had firm belief in Allah. And when I say he did it for the sake of Allah, again that's a big statement. When he used to read his salah, when he used to fast, when he used to read his Quran, he did it for the sake of Allah. Nowadays we may read our salah because if we don't, what will people say? If we don't fast, what will people say? We're fasting because we have to fast. We're reading our namaz because we have to read our namaz. But he did everything for the sake of Allah. There was an instance once where he was on a train and the train was heading towards Bareilly and it stopped at a train station. And as you know, in the park of the Indian subcontinent, some trains stop for 2 minutes, 10 minutes, half an hour. They have different timing periods. And if you know the train settings, you know when you can get off the train and get something to eat. You know when you get off the train and read your salah. It stopped at a train station and Sayyid Al Hazrat got off and the students that were with him and they started to read the salah on the platform. A short time later, the first whistle was blown. The passengers get on the train. And then the final whistle is blown. Meanwhile, Sayyid Al Hazrat is reading his salah. He's in the court of Allah. He's listening to anything. Many people, they got up and run towards the train's about to go. He carries on with his salah. The final whistle is blown, the flag's worn, but lo and behold, the engine switches off. The train engine switches off. So the driver at the front, he makes a signal, and the person comes forward and says, what's the problem? He said, the engine's gone off. So sort it out, your train's going to be late. So he's trying to sort out the train engine. He quickly calls the mechanic that's in the station to have a look at the train engine. What's going on here? Meanwhile, Sayyidi Ala Hazrat is reading his salah. And then one person, he saw Ala Hazrat reading his salah, and he said to the train driver, you know what? See that person over there? He's in the court of Allah. Maybe because of what he is doing right now, your engine is not starting. And a short time later, when Ala Hazrat did the salam, the engine started. Those people that run after the dunya, they never get the dunya. Those people that run after the akhirat, the dunya runs after them. And I've seen this personally in my life many, many times, that those people that run after the akhirat, the dunya runs after them. Because shaitan wants the dunya to run after them. Because shaitan wants the dunya to stop them, to grab hold of them. But they're not looking at the dunya, they're looking at the akhirat. And Sayyidi Ala Hazrat was like this. He had the iman inside him as well. Once Sayyidi Ala Hazrat, he was sitting with a meteorologist. These are the people that you can look at the weather, yeah? And they can look at the pressure and the clouds, and they can do all these sort of things and look at the thing. And Ala Hazrat said to him that according to your knowledge, when do you think it's going to rain? Because it's not been raining for some time. And the meteorologist said, it's not going to rain for at least 2 months. The pressure, all these sort of reasons. And Allah Hazrat said to him, look, if Allah wills, it can rain right now. Do you understand this? And the person said, I know what you're saying, but I'm telling you, it will not rain for another 2 months. So the person, we haven't got, you know, like that kind of clock at the back, you know, the hands clock. The clock was reading 10 to 12. So Allah Hazrat said to him that when will that clock read 12 o'clock? And the person said, it'll be another 10 minutes. It'll take 10 minutes to read 12 o'clock. Sayyidi Ala Hazrat went up to the clock, got to the finger and pushed it forward. He said, you said it'd take 10 minutes. It's reading 12 o'clock now. And the person said to him, well, you intervened. You intervened, and because of your intervention, the clock is now reading 12 o'clock. He said, do you not think that if Allah Azza wa Jalla wants to intervene, it will not rain? And he went quiet. Short time later, it started to rain. Allahu Akbar. This is the iman that he had. This is the iman that he had. The firm belief that he had in the power of Allah. There was an incident, a famous incident, you know, in the times that Allah Hazrat was with us. At that time, you know, nowadays, if you invite me to your house or I invite you to my house, you make your own way. Yeah? Come in your own car, make your own way, get on the tube and come to my house. That time, when you invited a guest to your house, you would send the mode of transport to them. And at that time, the mode of transport was these palquins. For respectable people, they would have a palquin. And what a palquin is, like a box. Yeah? And there'd be 2 poles. And the guest would get inside the box, and the people would lift up the box. And in this instance, there's a palquin was sent. And Sayyidi Ala Hazrat, he came out of his house, he got inside the palquin. And when the palquin was lifted up, they walked 2 steps. And Ala Hazrat said, stop, put me down, put me down. So they put him down. He got out of the box. He looked to the 4 people that were the carriers, and he said to them, tell me, I can smell a Sayyid. Smell a Sayyid. Allahu Akbar. I can smell a Sayyid. Which one amongst you is a Sayyid? And one of the palquin bearers said, Hazur, I am a Sayyid. And when he made that statement, Sayyidi Ala Hazrat's face changed, his complex changed. He was in fear now, he was so scared. And he started asking forgiveness from him. That how is it possible that I allow a Sayyid to carry me? I should be carrying you. Please forgive me, please forgive me. And this person said, it's my job, I'm a laborer, it's my job, it's okay. And he said, what will I say if the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says to me that were my children there just to carry you? What will I have to say on that day? I will not be able to face the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam on that day. Sayyidi Ala Hazrat, he took off his turban and put it at the feet of the Sayyid. And you can imagine a lot of people gathered round. And Allah Hazrat would not let the situation drop until the Sayyid got inside the palquin himself, and Allah Hazrat himself carried him. This is respect. This is respect. Do we have this? Do we love the Sayyids like Allah Hazrat did? Do we love Medina like Allah Hazrat did? Do we have faith in the Sunnah of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam like Allah Hazrat did? Do we have a firm belief in the power of Allah Azza wa Jalla like he did? I go back to the beginning. when we are asked, what is it, how can you say that you love the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? This will be when you obey his orders, when you follow his footsteps, when you observe his sunnah, when you love his devotees and hate his enemies. Do we? What is the difference between that person who keeps the prescription in his pocket and us who keep the Quran on the shelves? Remember this, the Quran is not just a book for the month of Ramadan. Many of us during the month of Ramadan will read the Quran, but then for the rest of the year we forget about it. The Quran is not just for Ramadan, remember this. And nowadays we're facing problems. My wife, my children, my spouse, my this, all these problems that we're facing, the Quran and my way, follow them, you will never go astray. The cure has been given. We've wrapped it up in a beautiful cloth, we put it on the top shelf and we leave it there. This is our fault. If you are facing any difficulty in your home, if you are facing any personal problems in your home, with your spouse, with your children, with your family, if you want to find out the source of that problem, 9 times out of 10, the source of the problem, you'll find him. When you go to the bathroom and you look at the mirror, that person in front of you, he's the source of your problems. We do dua to Allah, but we don't listen to Allah. You know, just even on a worldly example. If I used to ask the brother, please do this, and he said no. Please do this, and I said no. He did everything I asked him to do, he said no. And then one day he comes and asks me something. Do you think I'll listen to him? How do we expect Allah to accept our du'as when we're not listening to what Allah Azza wa Jalla has told us to do? Allah Azza wa Jalla has commanded us to do these things. And then we say, my du'as aren't accepted. Allah doesn't listen. Astaghfirullah. Allah listens. The problem is us. And we need to make a change in our lives. So yes, come to these gatherings, but make a change in your life. And when you make a change in your life, you don't make it tomorrow, you don't make it next week, you make it today, you make it now. We were sitting with some people, and one of the person, he made an intention. He said, okay brother, you know what? From the 1st of Ramadan, I'll make sure that I read my salah 5 times a day. So some of the brothers said, Subhanallah. I said, why are you saying Subhanallah? He said, because he made an intention to read his salah every day, 5 times a day from the 1st of Ramadan. I said, no, he hasn't. He's made an intention that from now to the 1st of Ramadan, he's not going to read his salah. He's made an intention that from now to the 1st of Ramadan, he's going to commit these sins. If you are going to change, you don't wait for Ramadan. If you're going to change, you don't wait for Friday. You don't wait for your daughter to get married. You don't wait for that kitchen extension. You don't wait for that koti to be built. You make the change now. Imam Ghazali Rahmatullah Ta'ala, he said that there's only 3 breaths in your life. The breath that's gone, the breath that's coming, and this breath. This is the only thing I've got a guarantee in my life, this breath right now. So if I'm going to change, it's now. So please, when you come to these gatherings, when we hear about these great people, our rich heritage that we have, learn from them. Don't just take them as nice stories. Oh, that was a nice story. I'll tell my kid that story. Yeah, I like that story. I like that story. Learn from it. You know, when we hear from the life of the Prophet of Allah, when we hear from the life of our pious predecessors and the events that took place that were passed down from generation to generation, they were passed down for a reason. They weren't just passed down so it would be a nice story. They were passed down so that we can learn something from it. So that we can make a change in our lives. So please, make a change. Make a change before it's too late. Make a firm intention that you are here today to celebrate the life of a lover of the Prophet of Allah, a true lover of the Prophet of Allah, but also make intention to try and follow in his footsteps. And one of the things he also used to do, is that Sayyid Al-Hazrat every day after Salatul Asr, he would sit down and his students would come and they would ask him questions. And people would learn from him. We also have a great opportunity to learn from a lover of the Prophet of Allah currently with us. Amir al-Sunnat, the founder of Dawah Islami. If there is a wali of this time, if there is a lover of the Prophet of Allah at this time, it is him. And every Saturday night, the Madani Muzakara takes place, live broadcast. You know, I said to many people that in 200 years' time, people will write. You know, I read about Sayyid Al-Hazrat sitting with his students and I'm thinking, subhanAllah, how lucky were those students that they used to sit with him. In 200 years' time, in 100 years' time, people write books. And they write about those fortunate people that were able to sit in the court of Amir al-Sunnat. They write about those fortunate people that were able to watch live broadcasts of Amir al-Sunnat. He is with us right now. Let's take this full opportunity. Make a change in your life. Try to gain this knowledge that we all need. And Dawah Islami is here to provide you with that knowledge. They give you these weapons so that you can protect your Iman. Everything that Dawah Islami is doing to protect your Iman. This building, the madrasa that takes place in this building, the Darul Madinah is only a few miles away from this building, the Jamatul Madinah that's not very far from, all of these institutes are there to protect our Iman and the Iman of future generations. So please gather, join this environment of Dawah Islami to protect your Iman and protect the Iman of future generations. How can you join? There's no application form, don't worry, we're not going to get you to fill anything in. But support, help, work. Whether it's your time, whether it's your support, whether it's your du'as, whether it's your donations, we can all do something to help the deen of Islam. I pray to Allah Azza wa Jalla, if I've said anything wrong, may Allah Azza wa Jalla forgive me. And I pray to Allah Azza wa Jalla, Allah give me and you the ability to think about what I've said, to act upon what I've said, and to pass this message on to others as well. Sallu ala al-Habib.
Mubarak, for you is my prayer. May you keep ascending success stair. Mubarak, for you is my prayer. May you keep ascending success stair.